welcome. It's our second roundup panel of the day, and we're going to be discussing the menswear autumn-winter 14 season, and we're going to be talking about Milan, which some would say isn't the most exciting city, but maybe I have a very exciting panel with me, so we'll make something exciting out of all that tailoring and all that heritage. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, though, starting with you.
So my name is Ben Lever, and I'm the brand director of Kilgar.
I'm Nick Carvell, online fashion editor at gq.co.uk.
I'm Mimma Viglezio, and I'm a creative consultant.
I'm Tom Stubbs, and I'm the style and luxury columnist for the for the Financial Times. How to Spend It.
Got there in the end.
Yeah, a flashback.
Was I being unfair there when I said that Milan's perhaps not the most exciting city? Because it's a criticism that's often levied at Milan, especially now we've got the amazing success of London collections meant that Milan, it's kind of, you know, you've seen it all before in a way. Am I being unfair? Tom, I'll go to you first. What's your take on it?
Well, it's not exactly in this sense, is it? And you said London collections is sort of buzzing and on the way up, so it's tricky. And they are a little bit scared. And I've said to Dylan, you know, go easy on them, leave them with something, because he's, you know what I mean, they've sort of rinsed some of the key players. So they're a little bit scared on the ground in Milan. And its strong points aren't perhaps cutting edge fashion, and that's what everyone's looking at. That's what the runways are all about. So it can look a little bit vulnerable, stroke silly at times. But there's other stuff going on that's still good.
What? I think the thing with Milan as well is that what the Italians are known for is beautiful suiting and wonderful leatherworking and beautiful outerwear. And I think that whilst that is all brilliant in itself, it's very hard to make a show that truly stands out when everyone's showing stuff that's of such high quality and so beautiful. I think that's maybe why they find it a bit harder to stand out in Milan, maybe.
So what would we say the strength of Milan is? Is it in that sort of, in the fabrications, in the, working somewhere like Kilgar, when you look to Milan, is that what excites you? You know, some of the fabrics we saw this season were absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I think, it's luxury, you know, there's loads of big brands there, you know, there's loads of amazing spectacles, but I just don't think there's anything new coming out of Milan. And I think when I was buying for Harvey Nichols and I used to go to the shows, it just became a bit sort of blasé Milan, you know, we were really excited about London, kind of a little bit bored in Milan, and then really excited when we got to Paris. So it's kind of, it just doesn't feel that kind of relevant. You're not really expecting to see anything new. You know, it's kind of just, it's the big brands, it's big business, it's commercial.
Advertising week, isn't
yeah,
it,
exactly.
really?
You know, but it's just not.
You disagree with me,
It's not that I disagree. I'm very interested in hearing what you say when you were a buyer, because for me, Milan is probably more boring as far as the show is concerned, but I thought it was more relevant for buyers. So I'm very surprised about what you say. But I think to talk about this year Milan, for me the disappointing part was Prada, because usually it stands out and it creates a new trend, it brings something new, and as much as I love the show, I don't think it brought what we usually expect from Prada, but I can see
What a show though,
faces.
amazing show.
Can we go to Prada?
Yeah, it was an amazing show, but it wasn't the Prada that usually, you know,
She blows hot and cold, doesn't it? I'd say that was hot, wasn't it? You know what I mean? That was quite berserk, what was going on. That sort of show-wise. We're in a pit, we're playing Lotti Lenya.
Beyond
some thrash metal.
I know, but I'm talking about the collection.
Oh, that, yeah.
It was amazing to be there, I think that's what
It'd be
I'm
nice
saying.
when it's finished, that one.
It was incredible, like some of the, were you sat in the pit as well?
Yeah, I was well proud to be in the pit.
Yeah, I was very proud to be in the pit as well.
Tell them what the pit involved.
It was amazing. It was incredible. So you got in and the whole of the set was covered in kind of felt. It was completely grey. And it was very much performance-based, the show. So there were some of the audience were viewing it almost from like a balcony area. Others were sat around the sides. And then some of us kind of precious lucky few were in almost like an orchestra pit in the middle. And there weren't even that many of us. There were like 20 of us in there.
Less, 12.
You're like, just me and you. It was great. It was absolutely incredible. And you saw the collection in such a different way. And it was quite a spectacle, because when the pieces were going past
No one from GQ I noticed was in there. It's weird.
Yeah, were you not in there?
From the pit, where we're looking up, what happens in the pit? I mean,
it was like an orchestra pit, and you were just sat in it, and they walked.
So you were seeing what, the shoes?
No, you saw it all
just
really
from
well.
a different perspective. An exciting perspective.
It's weird.
And the clothes were pretty exciting, and as much as it was sort of a 20s thing going on with the mad sort of Lotti Lenya, Carvell references and stuff, but also that when the 20s cropped up quite a lot in the 70s, so it was a 70s thing, which is how it worked clothes-wise, colour and stuff like that, and some of the jackets were working quite nicely. Trousers, she nosed up a little bit, I thought, but
yeah, I wasn't a fan of the trousers.
Allow that.
They look quite unflattering, actually.
But the women look mental as well, which you shouldn't really you know, they look brilliant. So it's a distraction, but there was good menswear in that. And it was a
I
brilliant
think
show.
that was the women's thing that you raised is really astute, because I felt like in a lot of the commentary, a lot of the reviews, the women's one was so incredibly striking and beautiful and like really sensual. It's quite hard to see in some of these images, but when they stood on the platforms, when they walked around, the girls' skirts were sort of completely sheer, and the furs just looked so much more sort of dynamic and huge on the runway.
And the colour.
Yeah, the colour.
Maybe it should be about this collection about what you would wear if you were to walk out with this girl. That's what it should have been. Because it didn't quite make it, did it? But
no,
it was very good.
It was interesting because it felt like the men were an accessory to the women, which I loved.
But the thing with Prada as well is that one of the things about Milan is because it is so concentrated on things like tailoring and the fabrics they're using. Sometimes it's actually you get more from the collection by seeing it up close. So from the re-see the next
definitely.
day, and that was one thing that definitely came through in Prada. Like when I saw it on the catwalk, I thought it was good. It obviously wasn't as immediately like as eye-catching as last
printed,
season because
it
it was hard to follow that, especially when you're not using print, and she was going to have to do something completely different.
Yeah.
But when you get up close to the stuff, that's when you really see it for what it's worth, and the stuff was cut absolutely beautifully. I've got to say I was quite a fan of the trousers this time around. Because normally I'm not a big fan of wide trousers, so I quite like it when they're slimmed down a bit.
Yeah.
I've got to say.
Interesting.
Yeah, some of them look quite slouchy, though, don't they? That kind of sort of like dropped in the crotch, and they're kind of quite baggy.
It was quite raggedy. That's what I quite liked about it. It was kind of like the people doing their Sunday best. The furs were kind of, it was like poor actors. You know, there was a real narrative to it, which I enjoyed.
Yeah.
Because Milan, you don't look to Milan for narrative fashion at all. There's no story, but there's always a bit of a story in Prada.
It was definitely like the morning after the night before this one. It's like some really posh couple that had gone out American Hustle style in the 70s and were kind of, the woman had like, forgotten her bra and stuff the next day. I thought it had a great story to it, as you're saying.
It's interesting what you say about the narratives, because I was going to say, to me, it's all about the presentations now. I mean, it's more what I work on. But there was like 13 presentations on the Sunday. So good. They were all the strongest shows as far as I was concerned. Yeah. And in some of those, they were working on a stronger narrative. There's like, Boglioli had these various characters, and Caruso have got these sort of 6 or 8 characters they repeat that live all around the world, and they're quite, and each time they play something out, maybe that's the way forward, to do something a bit more convincing in menswear rather than a runway thing. I think it's all about the presentation these days.
And people seem to have caught on with that, not to do this kind of London-Milan comparison sort of too simplistically throughout the discussion, but it's caught on in London, this idea of presentation, and people are doing it.
Touching cloth's the story, so it's all about having a little touch, Nick.
I got you back. I hear you.
When you say touching cloth, though, that's what I was going to ask. Is that what Milan is about? It's just fabric? Because if you think some of the stuff we saw this, like to take it to Xenia, for example, it's all about kind of material, and that's what Milan's great for.
I thought Xenia actually, Pilati actually delivered second show. Quite a lot of ideas. I was a bit sceptical about his arrival.
I agree, totally.
For a big, serious house like that don't want to be messing around too much. I was thinking, what's he doing with a suit? Calm down, it was fine. But now, second collection, some outerwear ideas, some quite interesting things with suiting, some mad sort of scarf things, there was trendy stuff in there.
Yeah.
Classic fabric and new fabric. I thought Pilati did really well.
I thought it was a perfect balance between modernity and classic, and that's what Milan should be. I mean, the tailoring, the fabrics, whatever, but then it needs some modernity, and I really, really loved this second show.
Did you?
Pilati. Yeah, I really did.
What when he was pointed there, that must have been quite. Being somewhere like Kilgore, where Carlo, he's a kind of a forward-thinking man. Were you happy to see a forward-thinking designer put in that kind of position?
I did the Xenia panel, so we spoke about this at length, but it was kind of Xenia's really changed as a brand over the last sort of few years. They kind of, a couple of years ago they wanted to be Loro Piana. Now they've decided they want to be fashion. So Xenia was a really great show, in terms of the music, in terms of the film, everything that went with it. The clothes looked modern, the fabrics looked really interesting. And then I thought Xenia as well was one of the best shows in Milan. So it was kind of, it's a really, I think, it's really interesting what they're doing.
That was a good show because it brought in the idea of 4 and maybe even 5 button
that was kind of
suiting, which is, kind of looks odd, really.
Yeah.
It's got to happen.
Yeah, but I think it was interesting as well that just going through a lot of the shows, the jackets are starting to look a little bit longer as well. So when you see it's kind of, which is still, I think what you'll probably find is when you go to buy the brand, they'll show you the long jacket in the show, but you go into the showroom and they'll still be selling all the short jackets, because these kind of things, these swings take a few seasons, a few years to really happen. But you saw that especially in Xenia, those 4-button jackets were a little bit longer, that kind of really moddy look, and you saw it kind of came through last year with McQueen. McQueen kind of did it. They did that kind of like that Victorian show, their first show in London, and that was kind of that longer silhouette, So
Dolce managed to do it a few, apart from their sort of peculiar bit at the beginning.
Yeah.
Towards the end, there was actually long jackets, proper ones, and they were doing ridiculous bum freezers not long ago.
Yeah.
So thank God, and that is going to happen for men. I mean, the forward-thinking tailors already on that. People, it's, you know, something like the X Factor. There's blokes in tiny little top man suits with their bums out. It's not for men then, is it? Any much longer.
Yeah.
It's got to change.
But I think people are very body conscious now, you know, so they want to show, you know, they spend a lot of time in the gym, they want to show off as much as possible. So something that's quite
Literally
skinny,
showing
quite
their bums off. So that
yeah, maybe if you're going to the gym and you're spending a lot of time, you know, why you would want to show it
No,
off,
I
I'd
think that's
imagine.
a fair
Self buff is what you want to be. So like you're not sure, and then you find out that you perhaps.
Yeah,
after
but
that.
these, you know, these things take a little bit of time to come through. So
Talking about, yeah.
What are the big? That's interesting. Sorry, Nick, to cut you, but it's really interesting when you talk about the longer jackets. Is there anything else that you're seeing in tailoring? You talk about these kind of seasonal or kind of 3-season.
I think it's just, you know, it's kind of what we're trying to do at Kilgar as well. Is kind of like, you know, we're trying to just sort of like reinvent the suit a little bit and move it on a little bit. So if you look at like a lot of the, you know, looking at lapels and stuff in Xenia and the waistcoats and so on, it was all quite a modern take on tailoring.
One thing that I notice is those shawl kind of color
Yeah.
Bang on,
in the
exactly.
coats. And hence the volumes, and you know, the jackets and the coats were much more generous in volume in that shawl or robe style, which
they're
I
kind of
think it's
outer
Shawl's
so,
exactly correct. It's also an
it's so
evening thing.
sexy and maybe a little bit Great Gatsby kind of style.
Yeah.
You know, the
Shawls
influence.
everywhere. You're very right about that.
And it's I think it's very sexy, and it's also very wearable. I don't know what the
Yeah.
men think, but it's one of the things that has changed a lot in the past
But it
probably
was an
2
evening
years.
thing, wasn't it? And they sort of nicked it and
Yeah.
using it all over the shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also the knitted coats.
Oh my
There
God.
was
Yeah, everywhere.
a fantastic one in the Canali show that nobody ever mentioned. There were those knitted coats in those pastel color. They were so beautiful.
That jacquard
And
coats, aren't
luxury,
they? I mean,
yes.
it's almost a step too far.
So
a jacquard
beautiful.
overcoat is quite mad, isn't
Yeah.
it, Jan?
And that's very interesting because I think, you know, the more we talk about Milan, it's true that when you look at it like this, it's very grey, it's very tailored, but then there's some things that might happen that don't revolutionize anything, but, you know, they brought some relevant fashion. Wasn't that you in the FT this weekend that say men's fashion is relevant again?
No, that's Charlie.
That was Charlie. See?
He was on this morning.
I read it.
It's the pink paper. This is the, you know.
Okay, and I totally agree about this relevance coming back in men's fashion.
Talking about, we've all kind of said that Bum Freezers are dead, but then to go to Gucci, which was a very kind of, it felt like a very directional show, and it was obviously trying to make a statement about fashion. It wasn't really about, she was trying to embrace a trend, you know.
Oh, I thought she was quite sensible, really.
Did you?
Sensible looks, I thought. Did I see it? Sort of nice, sort of
Safer
bit of a colour
than
thing,
usual.
bit 60s.
Yeah, can we go to the begin, like right at the bottom, because it was all colourful and then it went black. Thanks, Anne.
So she was using like sort of
It was rather safe.
weird teals and a bit of sort of dusty pink. I thought it was quite nice, quite wearable. That is. Look, that fella there could actually walk down the street, no problem. That's quite rare. You know, him.
He's right though. I think Frida did something that was very wearable and safe because it needed it. I mean, I think the Gucci man was quite a type of hip and trendy, but then I don't know if it really sold. I mean, when I was in Gucci Group, it certainly didn't, but it's been now 5 years, so. But this is completely
Wearable
wearable and sellable
applaud
and-
for
It's
that,
a
really.
very nod to current, you know, it's not trying to move anything forward in terms of tailoring. It felt like this is kind of a nod to how men dress. It's very fashiony in that sense. You know, those suits are kind of, the top man suit you were talking about before, that's a kind of similar aesthetic to what we're seeing here.
Almost, yeah. I mean, I think Gucci shouldn't necessarily be shown as the way. They should be shown as their accent on luxe. You know, their accent on, on the trend that's going. They're not really a boundary pusher, are they?
No.
I don't
If
think.
you look at that, see
I
that's
wouldn't like to hear that, but I
Wouldn't
agree.
they?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I don't think so, but I agree.
But
yeah.
they've done their best work in, 53. It's done. Shoes. You know, so just rest on that.
Whoa.
You're all
It's
right.
like, just keep going. Sorry, what were you going to
No, but that suit in the middle there, the light blue one with the little kind of sort of sandy coloured shirt underneath, polo shirt or whatever. That's their best.
Good book.
That's the one. So that's their best selling suit. That little short jacket.
Right.
So that's you know.
Right. Okay. I mean, it's
So
not
that's-
that short, is it?
It's
fairly
that short. Yeah, it's pretty short. But that's kind of but he doesn't look the tallest of models, but it's still got that kind of 60s feel again, though, hasn't it? Down
Yeah.
at the show, but.
Very 60s.
But yeah, again, that's the one thing that comes through as a buyer. So I mean, I touched on this last time as well. But when I used to buy Gucci for Harvey Nichols, I'd already spent 90% of my budget before I even went to see the show in pre-collection.
Did it sell?
Yeah, but that's all the commercial things. So the things that your bread and butter are in the pre-collection. So I go to that show and I'll maybe pick one or two looks from that show. And it's not, that's why it's not so relevant for
And is
buyers
the
anymore.
Gucci shop
Well, that's the
remotely interested in a kind of seasonal drop, or is he just interested
I think there's certain elements from that. They'll pick a certain colours, certain pieces.
Well, the commercial collection is always tricky because you go and they're actually quite nice. You think, oh, this is dead nice. I could actually wear some of this gear as
Yeah.
well. Whereas there's sort of freak shows going on the runway. So, what's your thinking on that? Because personally, as a sort of bloke who represents older fellas, I have a snigger and make daft notes. I'm sorry, but like those, and then go and look at the commercial collection and think, oh, very nice, and talk about that.
Yeah.
So what do you lot think about the sort of,
Well, I think that's why as a buyer, Harvey Nichols used to get more excited about Paris, because that's when you'd buy the show collection, you'd buy the that's what you're buying, and the same in London. That's the first time you're seeing it. So it just becomes, those shows become really relevant for buyers, whereas Milan, it's just not.
But a show that does do that in Milan is Versace. The things that she puts out are the things that she sells, and that's amazing. When that's one of the maddest shows. Can we go?
Versace was good as well, wasn't it? Really exciting, wasn't it?
It was a pretty good show this season. It was,
Well, Ben, as much as that, in fact, if you're a mad, I don't know, to pick on a Roach's Terrace, say you're a mad rich Russian guy, for example, top of my head, and you want to party quite hard with your mad big rich mates. What else are you going to wear?
Well, yeah, it's big.
It's not half of humanity. I mean, how can you say
this is niche.
The
what
most
we're doing,
wearable and sellable.
We're doing niche luxury sort of. It's not for everybody.
And
is
it sells. The thing is, it sells. If it goes online and it sells out, like if you speak to the guys at StockX, a retailer like Matches, for example, they say when they put it up, it goes. And when they put up like a leather jogging pant, it goes. It's not kind of a Versace t-shirt.
Yeah, but they sell probably 2 every season.
No, I think they do quite big orders from Versace.
Really?
It's one of their biggest sellers.
Versace was one of my best sellers at Harvey Nichols, and all the sales come from t-shirts and shirts. That's not like, so you would buy some of the crazy things from the show and some of like the really embellished leathers and so forth, but what's really commercial for those is just anything with the kind of Medusa on it, anything in the Baroque prints. That's where the money is.
What about the chaps that show the underwear?
But I think that was a commercial thing. Again, that was like, look at our underwear, look at our amazing underwear. Versace underwear is the biggest kind of huge part of the brand, and I think the chaps were there, so that shot would go everywhere. Everyone would go, nice pair of pants, I'll buy some Versace underwear. I think that was quite commercial, and it looked mad.
Yeah, even if you think remember 3 seasons ago, when they did the gladiator belts. They did like those kind of wrestler belts and stuff. We had those in Harvey Nichols, sold them all.
Really?
Yeah.
Who was buying them?
Just all sorts of people. You just get the most random people buying it. So, Russians, Chinese as well. Chinese are mad for it. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. What did you think of the show, Nick? You went to the show, didn't you?
Versace. I was in the show. I'm just trying to think through what else that's me in the chaps.
With the chaps,
Yeah, my legs are that good. No, I thought actually from Versace, if you think about what Versace was like, last season, where it was so like massively colourful and had those sort of like strips all over their legs and everything like that. This is actually, for Versace, a fairly restrained offering. Yeah. Which is actually, and there were lots of bits in it, whereas, some seasons you look at Versace and you think, wow, God, what could I pull out of that? Yeah. This one you can be like, oh, there was quite a good leather jacket in there, and you could pull that out. And I wouldn't necessarily wear chaps, but I would use it with jeans and it would work. Yeah. And I also, again, talking about the trousers in it, they'd sort of slimlined the silhouette a bit more to something maybe a bit more wearable with the tailoring, because obviously Versace in many recent years has been known for exactly the opposite of what we've been talking about with top man suits and everything. They've got the other direction, which is properly 80s, big shoulders, really small waists, big trousers, properly like Wolf of Wall Street style. Yeah, it's almost. Whereas this season it was a lot more wearable.
They're big Goodfellas actually, and they're tailoring those really big wide lapels, the short jackets, the really low drop. There's a couple of them.
You're actually right. I shouldn't have said Wolf of Wall Street. I should have been like back further, back into like 30s. Yeah.
But do we like to see something like Versace? If someone is doing something that she said, there was a great piece that Alex Fury did in The Independent about her, where she said, I kind of lost my way a bit with the menswear for a while, and she was like, and I was trying to do what I thought would sell and what everyone else was saying I should do, and now I kind of just have fun with it, and she does exactly what she wants to do, and it does sell. And is it great to see something like this that at least has a kind of point of view that isn't so sort of sanitized as everything else that we were talking about?
I always look forward to the Versace show. It's one of my highlights when I go out to Milan. Yeah.
Well, I think I'm not a Versace person in women's wear, or I probably wouldn't go out with someone dressed like that. However, I have huge respect for Versace, the brand, because it's very consistent.
Yeah, it just puts itself out there.
Yeah. Now, I mean, we've known how the business has been going in the past year. It's not always been very successful, so, but it has a point, it's consistent.
It's consistent, which is interesting, because I think people would make that comparison to something like Prada. They would say, it's an incredibly strong brand, but actually, in terms of design, Prada's not consistent at all. Every season is very different, and I think it's interesting that they're kind of two of the mighty ones in Milan that operate such a different way.
I think that the consistency of Miuccia is the being very creative, to the creating new trends, a new way to see fashion. I think Miuccia is one of the few designers that really can change the things, you know, and even if her past women's collection is not my favorite one, but I see the importance of it like a work of art. It's not what you would live with, but it's important.
She's kind of saying, this is what we've been thinking about.
Exactly. But Donatella is Donatella. It's a different story.
It's not really a
for
thinking
me.
person's collection, is it? It's more of a kind of...
It's her vision.
Yeah.
You know?
But it's got that sort of editorial. It's so strong editorial. Like if you know, on the big out of the big shows at Milan, you've got these certain big brands that are competing for what's going to end up on the front page of the newspaper. And this collection is obviously going to be the one that's going to end up there because it's the most visually appetizing stuff. Even though it's not, you know, it's one of those collections that you might put it on something and people are like, God, that's really unwearable. How like this is men's fashion. This is crazy. But then it's going to get press, and then there are bits that you can take out of it. It's just about distilling it down and taking her vision and saying, well, actually, these are the wearable bits from it, and pushing that out there.
To go to another house that's has a lot of buzz around it at the moment, I'd like to talk a bit about Fendi, because I think this was the first time they did a catwalk presentation. You know, previously they'd done they'd had
sand dune.
Yeah, exactly. They'd done sand dune. Well, they'd done these kind of rolling presentations, hadn't they, where you could kind of drop in and out, and there would be models walking on a catwalk, but it wasn't as. Whereas this was a kind of seated catwalk presentation. What was our take on Fendi? Because we've dipped in and out of talking about luxury, and I'd like to talk about that a bit more. And to me, this was a very kind of, it was all about luxury, and how the quantity of fur there, even the runway was made of fur, and they've done some interesting things with fabrication. So, you know, like neoprene and leather sort of designed to look like fur. It was very much about that kind of that luxury that we were talking about before with fabrication. What was our take on Fendi?
It was almost where Fendi should be. But then there were some suits that were a little bit, don't know how many of you remember, Foster's. There was a sort of some flex that were a little bit Foster's menswear, but which I'm not sure they're aiming at. And some other bits that were a little bit Sesame Street as well, sort of quite that much fur.
Too fuzzy.
Big fur.
Yeah, so, but in between that there was a sort of slickness and a sort of little bit of raciness to it that's correct for Fendi, I think. So
when you say correct for Fendi, you said that kind of raciness, but what do you mean by correct for Fendi?
Fendi's a bit sort of got, you know, I might be wrong. My idea of it is it's a bit racy and so it's slightly sexy luxe. It's got a sort of loose quality to it.
Yeah.
You've got to be shaped to be wearing Fendi, haven't you? Don't know. I would have thought.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just silly. Or might like actually that could be the look, being sort of out of shape, wearing Fendi and not caring.
Yeah.
That's what I'm imagining. Old-fashioned, ostentatious.
Yeah.
Glamour.
When you say old-fashioned ostentatious, that feels like that's a trend that runs through Milan.
That's Roman. That's the answer to being Roman. You know,
Yeah.
Rome is bold and ostentatious and old-fashioned. So you said it spot on. I absolutely adore this show. I thought there was a little bit too much fur going on, and it's not only for a moral thing, but also a little bit too much. But I like the silhouette.
What point does
I
it
like
become immoral?
those
What's
blues.
the tipping point? But with
Sorry?
fur, how much fur becomes immoral? That just crossed the line.
Well, I
think
think
the,
it's
moral.
the runway
I think it
was...
did.
Was that real? Was that real fur?
I
runway
crossed
was
the
Because that was
line.
a lot of fur.
Yeah.
I don't think we should, didn't want to
I've
go
been
into
assured
that
by
now.
their PR that it will be reused, the runway.
But the clothes were superb, I think.
So,
Put back on animals.
I don't know. I guess reused next season. But I think it's interesting with something like Fendi that what they've done, a lot of the fabrics were designed to look like fur that weren't fur, and that's almost quite an interesting thing, because when the takeaway is too much fur, when it,
They were walking on fur, which is a little bit
mix and match.
pushing it.
80 quid the whole suit.
I've got to say, in contrast to what Tom's saying, I actually really liked the suiting at Fendi, because I looked at it and I thought those are the kind of suits that I wear.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I can certainly respect the sort of mod suits that are coming through that are sort of 3 buttons, slightly longer, I know that personally on me, if I'm going to buy a suit, I'm not going to suit those type of suits. The type of suits I go for are 2-button because they're deeper, because I'm not very broad here, so I need to bring my shoulders out. And I do.
Self-help group.
But I thought the suiting at Fendi was really quite impressive, and there were some very nice sort of flecked wool suits towards the end, hidden under big fur coats.
Yeah.
And they did this new thing. They did this thing with waistcoats this time, where you sort of almost have a t-shirt, like a waistcoat, in the same material.
Yeah.
Which is something that I quite liked. So I thought
That
that is something that
felt quite cool,
I would definitely do in the future.
Another thing, it's family designed, isn't it? And that could be risky, isn't she? It's Fendi
it?
design.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah,
quite
Sylvia
that,
Fendi.
that can go wrong. Which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah, but they've been around for. Miuccia is also family. You
Yeah,
see what I mean?
yeah, but I mean that's nice. Someone it hasn't been for a while, has it, Fendi?
No, true.
And so she's
Yeah.
managed to sort of find it a little bit.
I think
Yeah,
it was
definitely.
spot on, and it was spot on with the DNA of the brand. I mean, they were trying to make a statement with the DNA of the brand, which
Yeah,
is fair,
definitely.
but
Yeah.
we
Well,
got
the last
it.
women's press release, it said all over it, in Carl's writing, fur is Fendi, Fendi is fur. Like,
Yeah, like the
That's kind
double
of the
F,
thing,
they say
isn't it?
Fendi
Yeah.
fur, I
Yeah.
mean, but I really loved the coats, the leather. I thought it was superb. I didn't see the collection. I wasn't there. I didn't touch it. So I only saw it in photographs, but I thought it was fantastic.
beautiful. What did you think of it?
I've never seen a collection with so much fur ever in
There's a lot
menswear.
of fur.
So it was just, but so if I was a buyer for Harrods or something, I'd be rubbing my hands together. I thought it'd be absolutely fantastic for them. But yeah, no, I thought it was really nice. I thought it was actually really nicely styled. I thought it was really nicely put together.
Yeah,
I
it
like
was
some of
nicely
the
styled.
little the printed shirts and things were really cute. And I think it looks
Who
really
styled
good
it?
too.
I don't know who styled it actually.
very
It's
beautifully
going to bother me now.
styled.
It was really nicely styled. It's not sharp. No, it's not. Who does it anymore?
The Nan did it, I think.
But talking about, you said you've never seen that much fur in a menswear collection. It's just kind of a slight aside, but there was fur everywhere this season.
So much fur.
So much fur. We saw it in London with Astrid. We saw Marnie was doing all that fur. It's been.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Fur for men? Yay or nay?
I think it kind of came back a year ago, and it was kind of like 2 years ago. There was quite a lot of it around, and last year there was more kind of shearling. There was less fur,
Exactly.
but it just seems to going around in a cycle. So.
It was kind of very showy fur that it
Yeah.
was coloured this year. It was kind of fur, really kind of.
Yeah.
Little removable trims on coats and stuff like that. That's going to be all right.
Yeah.
For
Which
proper
Marnie did
men.
very beautifully. Yeah.
I think there's going to be fur in women's collection next month.
Yeah, well, you saw that Prada, like everyone was wearing those Prada coats of, the really. kind of-
It's coming back, real, fake. I mean, it's yeah.
What's your take on it, Nick? Does the GQ man want to wear fur?
Well, I mean, speaking for myself, I'm not a big fur fan. Purely because, I don't have the budget to wear fur for a start, even if I wanted to. The thing is, I can understand why so many brands have done it, because it's one of those materials that really a luxury house can use to really set themselves apart from everything else. And so I can completely see why there's so much fur at the moment, with so much increased competition, so many more companies launching menswear or doing menswear well. I can see why so many brands have done fur, because it's the way of them setting themselves apart and showing they're a true luxury house. 'Cause that's
And I guess
something that you
it's
get
kind
from
of-
them. And you can't really replicate it as a fake.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talk about, during hard times, it's actually like real top-end luxury that sells
Yeah.
really well. And do you think that's got something
Yeah,
to
no,
do
I think so. I think if you want to be a luxury brand and you're going after those wealthy customers, the Russians, the Arabs, the Chinese, they love fur, and it sells. So
Did you see that thing at Anderson Shepherd haberdashery, the Icelandic, ethically farmed and recycled sort of fur? That was quite berserk. Really quite beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
Don't know how exactly it works commercially. Like they wait for them to die, but it did seem quite valid. Their point of view.
What if people like Saga, if you learn about the history of their fur, that's incredibly, the way they talk about it is incredibly interesting. I think there's going to be a bit of a fur moment, perhaps. But
You should have a little fur forum.
Fur forum, no thanks. I'm on Nick's camp with fur. I think there's so much great fake fur. But not about me. So, to talk a little bit more about this luxury idea, which we've all discussed a little bit. We were talking before in our London panel about how there's a sense of luxury being sort of hand-touched and craft that's really coming through in London. What do we think of as luxury? And particularly, you reference some of your work at Harvey Nichols, but what do you think a shopper sees as luxury? Is it still kind of things that are obvious, things like fur or cashmere, or is it more?
yeah,
This
I think it comes first from fabrication, because obviously that's the first thing you touch, and then as you put it on, then the construction and things becomes important, and then it becomes as well where it's made as well.
I think when
You
you
know?
wear it, you see luxury in
Yeah.
the way it's tailored and made and cut,
yeah.
and
Cut.
even before. I mean, if a beautiful cashmere is cut in the wrong way and
Yeah.
fabricated in the wrong way, it's not luxury. So I think that comes even maybe first.
Yeah.
You can see the difference.
Well, yeah,
when you
you
see
can-
two suits, you can see the perfectly tailored one and the other one. For men, it's even more difficult
And
than
they're
for women. I
legitimate things
think.
in this climate we're in now. Well, we've got some serious questions to ask ourselves about consuming luxury. Something that's been beautifully created, that's legitimate.
Yeah.
That's all right to be getting into. And equally, even the cloth is a metaphor for how we consume. And open stuff you can see into isn't glassy like the machines that have sort of let us down. It's open. It's got craftsmanship clearly. And that's legit. You're allowed to get into that. You're allowed to say, oh yeah, this is great texture, and it's even sort of quite direct way of speaking. Whereas sheeny, glassy clothes and stuff,
More
and shiny,
chocolates.
marvellous. Keep them coming. Thank you very much. Look wrong, and they should do. And sort of
Yeah.
glitzy colour and that, it's because we're in the bit of the West where we are, it's slightly controversial, but look, we feel awkward about ostentatious stuff, really bad stuff, whereas the new markets that are actually making all the dough still don't. You know what I mean? So the shows are still quite sort of colourful and eye-catching, whereas we know that's it's naff, really, isn't it? Like wearing really flash stuff, you just look wrong.
But I think that's interesting when you see what the designers in London are doing, because we talk about that as London design, so we see that innate to London, but then that's also, as you say, that's selling sort of abroad, it's not selling in London. So that kind of, like what we're seeing in Milan, it feels more European in its sensibility because it's slightly more kind of...
Well, the Milanese are desperate. I mean, what they're doing with checks is still the big trend. Checks, what the Italians do so well all over the whole of their peninsula is sort of copy what they think is the British look much better than we did. And their fabrics are amazing. All their mills like Viella, Vitali, Biberis and stuff, they're so British, but it's done like in Biella, just outside Milan. They're like the Brit flannels like Agnelli used to wear, and so they're just
getting it really well.
The tasteful Italians are doing a really upgraded impression of a British bloke. But you'll see that at the presentations, not on the runway.
Talk to me about the presentation, because we mentioned that before when you were speaking to me before the panel.
Well, I mean,
I love that you've got your notes.
I had to, otherwise I get the names
wrong.
wrong.
It's like story time.
It is a little bit like that. Settle down, please. But there's stuff like Massimo Piombo, who's like a mad sort of Marco Polo-esque character going to pluck fabrics out from everywhere. He showed in Jamaica Bar, which is a sort of thinkers, writers place in Milan, and he just puts it on odd people or non-models, and it is amazing stuff. Beautiful fabrics. It's an older guy stuff in a way, but quite avant-garde and ultra checks. And the way he combines fabrics. Bolioli is sort of got a new designer from Ralph, and their fabrics were amazing. What they were doing with sort of cottons that felt like wools and stuff, and everyone like that, didn't they? Totally unconstructed, not even a little bit, nothing in those shoulders. Beautiful stuff. And Caruso, like I was saying, that tell a beautiful story with these 7 characters, and that's really creative, tactile stuff, real stories you can get into, not silly. And I think that's where the real creativity is in Milan. And I go on to shoes as well, but I mean...
Well, you mentioned Piombo, and I want to pick up a bit more on that, because I don't want to take us into women's wear, because we have an amazing set of menswear experts here, but it feels like this idea that, a luxury male shopper who wants to buy something great, it's got to be good fabrics, and that idea just hasn't seemed to have caught on to women in the same way. So much more of an emphasis in the menswear, and I think that particularly came through. I don't know, do you feel that ever in Mimma? It's much more about the kind of pure visual impact for the women's wear, whereas men, it's much more about this depth.
Well, I think probably a fashionista girl wants to consume more, and so she tends to buy more of cheap because she can buy more. You see what I mean? Well, probably a man, I don't know a fashionista man, but probably a man who needs a suit for work, whatever. Maybe men are buying less but better. I don't know. This sounds very tried.
No.
However, I think, to go back to what I was saying before, you can see the difference in luxury and non-luxury in men tailoring much more than in a little dress.
Yeah, that's true.
For a woman, I mean, the famous McQueen dresses copied by Topshop, they're not the same, but they looked the same
similar.
from far, while
it's easy to dress well on a budget as a woman,
suit and a one of these suits, they don't look the same. So maybe that's the difference. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I interrupted you. No, all I was going to say is, I agree with what you're saying, that if you're a woman and you're buying something, and you're buying something that is, say, for a one-off event, so you're buying a dress for a dance or something like that, you do want that visual impact. I don't know. Whatever you're going to, a nice ball.
Dance hall thing, you mean?
I love that.
Yeah. Bashment, that's what he means.
A
means
ball.
You're stepping out with the boy.
Means
But
dance hall, sorry.
But
if you are buying it for a one-off event, that's exactly what you're doing. Men will invest in a suit, but because you can, mix things up with that suit, it doesn't really matter so much. I mean, men, well, certainly in my case, I don't have that many suits in my wardrobe. What I do buy more of are things like ties and shirts and stuff like that to mix up with it, because you can make a suit look different in 20 different ways. But you can't make a dress that you're going to wear.
It's kind of
it's done. Like that's it. I think that's probably the difference. So men
the
do
accessories
consider
help, and hence the accessories have made the fortunes of fashion.
Well,
I agree with you, but you say it right. I think the difference is in the fact that you see the difference in luxury much more.
But we've seen two different types of male shopper then. We've got the kind of fashion shopper, the guy that's buying some of the London designers, some of that more kind of similar stuff to what you're saying. You wear it once and it's kind of done because it's so bright, so logoed, and then we've got a stylish male shopper that's more interested in luxury, or is that too simplistic a way of seeing it?
But I think like even if you're buying, I think the very essence of what you buy in menswear as a man is actually more wearable for more events. Like if you're a young guy that has got some expendable income and can buy a really cool, like, I don't know, Katy Erie big printed t-shirt, like it's a t-shirt that can be worn with a lot of stuff, whereas if you're a girl you might go for a dress, which again you can still only wear once. I mean, I think the very makeup of menswear actually helps that in a way. Like we have more to mix together.
Well, menswear is just much more timeless. You know, the things that you wear, you can buy something, you can wear it forever. You know, because it's kind of the silhouettes are generally always the same, especially when you're talking about more commercial pieces. You know, it's kind of, you know, it doesn't really move on. You know, a lapel might get a little bit wider, a little bit smaller. A jacket might get a little bit longer, a little bit shorter.
That's
but
why
overall,
sounds
it's
really
kind
boring,
of,
Ben.
well, it is, but it's just it's a bit more boring.
It's
than
true.
women's,
We
isn't it,
probably
you know?
see the difference because we are from the industry, but then a classic suit is a classic suit.
Yeah.
But that can happen even
Yeah.
for women. You know, I've got some dresses and coats that, you know, they're beautiful and they've been going for years.
Yeah.
But if you want to wear the latest thing, it's more visible for a woman.
Yeah.
For a woman.
Well,
And women consume more fashion than men anyway.
A
Naturally.
men's suit as well. If you get a really nice bespoke suit and you spend some money on that, and you are so interested that you are concerned 3 or 4 seasons in that you've had this suit, or however many, 2 or 3 years in, that you want to slim down the lapels of it because that's the style. Like you can always take it back and get the lapels slimmed down, which is maybe something that's harder with women's wear. Like men's wear is a bit more fluid like
More
that.
fluid. To go to a collection, which I think is interesting, given that we've been talking about, you know, luxury and tailoring, and that I found particularly striking this season was Bottega, because it was such a, you know, we saw this big focus on casual. I think throughout Milan and indeed Paris, and like, you know, the tracksuit bottom was the real kind of trouser of this season, I thought, and I thought Bottega showed it. It was a really beautiful collection. I don't know how well it will come through in the images, but it was really that every trouser was cuffed at the bottom, elastic at the top, and it was very. It looks significantly more formal, I think, when you see it in pictures than it did in the flesh. What was our take on Bottega?
I've got to say, before anyone else jumps in, this was my absolute favourite show of Milan. I absolutely love this. I actually quite like the fact at the moment that, despite what I'm wearing at the moment, there were very few pairs of jeans and actually very little denim around now. Like denim's gradually going. I think men are now looking for another thing to replace it with because we've had so many years of it. And jogging bottoms seem to be coming through now. And I mean, I wore jogging bottoms for quite a lot of the shows this time around with a blazer like this. So I'm glad that other people are doing it.
Got to be cuffed though.
Yeah, they are. They're slim tailored, not like the ones you get from JDD, like big old baggy ones, go faster stripes. But these were great, and they showed that, you know, there are more things to life than a pair of jeans, because you can put them. I mean, there was a great look in this where it was all green from top to toe, and it was like a blazer and a jumper and then green trousers, and then they're all with boots as well and not with trainers. Like they were kind of formal jogging bottoms. I really loved this show. I thought it was great.
Do you agree with this idea that, you know, men are looking, you see a lot of men now who, they don't wear denim, they'll wear kind of, even like a pair of suit trousers with a jumper, or, you know, mix it up a bit more?
But I think as well, I think it's like the modern man, isn't it? So what he's doing in his life, and like obviously travel, and it's kind of really important now, and comfort I think is really important as well. So seeing these things in like tracksuit bottoms and jersey and all that kind of stuff, you know, unstructured tailoring, you know, it's really important, and it's just that kind of, you know, it's much more functional than a really sort of stiff formal suit, you know.
For sure. What did you think of it, Mimma? Because I know you have an interesting relationship with Bottega.
I absolutely love Bottega men. I mean, in the ready to wear, I mean, as much as I've been wearing for women's as well, I thought the work he was doing for men was always spectacular. And this show was very interesting because it was taking a different take on his style and what he does. And not always my cup of tea, but I don't think subjective matters. And I think what you were saying about, you know, the alternative to the denim in the sportswear was very interesting. I'm not a fan of track, you know.
Oh, I need to go.
I had the discussion with Dariush as well. I'm not a fan for the simple reason that it's not always really tailored. It's going to be copied by the non-luxury and worn by men that cannot afford it for age or body shape or body language. And it can be a disaster in the street. So I'm not that convinced. I think denim is more forgiven. It's easier to wear in a way. So I'm waiting to see what's going to happen in the street of the world. However, when it's done like this, it's quite spectacular. But how many people that will want to wear that? Yeah, but how many in the world
But
will
isn't
go
it more
to
of
take
a
a bike
proposition
like
of
know.
dressing rather than
Sorry?
rather than it being just about the jogger? Isn't it more kind of a proposition of dressing? As Dick said, it's kind of like avoid denim, perhaps
Yeah.
do. It's less literal than kind of go out
No,
and buy.
I know. But I loved in this show. I loved the colors. It started very
Yeah, the
beige,
colours
and
are
it was like,
amazing.
oh, it's very beige. But then it went into these beautiful greens.
And those kind of
I haven't
pieces
seen
with the
much
running
around.
dye.
It was very interesting, and the jacket, and again, you know, the volume, beautiful, very luxurious.
Talking of another collection that was decidedly casual, let's talk a little bit about what we saw at Emporio Armani, because that was very kind of
More jogging bottoms.
yeah, more jogging bottoms.
In velvet.
And also one of them was pulled so low that you could see Builder's bum, which is not very Armani, but that's quite striking. It's very casual.
Someone have got horsewhip for that at some point.
What was our take on this? Because this was jogging bottom central, wasn't it? Festival
Yeah.
of jogging bottoms.
I don't remember it, I must say. Can we see a little bit? Sorry.
Oh, this is Giorgio. Can we look at Emporio? Sorry, Han. I was like, why does this not look familiar? What was your take on it from what you can remember, Nick?
I'm just trying to think of it now. I'm just trying to remember what, because I was
We need help.
it's now thrown me seeing the other one. Emporio. I'll know this immediately. I see it.
I was at a presentation.
Clearly made a great impression.
No, it did. I
That
remember.
was a really nice
Basically,
presentation
my
during
mind.
this.
My mind has been so blown by the jogging bottom discussion.
Okay.
Emporio.
I won't put you on the spot.
Here we go.
You're like,
Velvet.
Okay.
give us a run through. Give
Yeah.
us a scroll
Let's
through.
go
Ian.
through.
Thank you.
So did it start with tuxedos, look?
This was
No,
right
this
at
is
the
the
end.
end.
No, this
Oh,
is the end.
okay.
It's
I'm
the other way
That's
around.
not possible.
No.
No, it's decidedly casual. We're getting to the interesting helmet section. Were you at the show,
More
Tom?
capes
What,
though.
No, I was at a presentation touching cloth.
what did you think? Have you had a look in pictures?
Not really. I'm a Giorgio guy
Oh, okay. Why are you a Giorgio
Such a
guy?
snob.
because it's better. And
Yeah.
sort of like and some of this stuff just scares me. Do you know what I mean? Like lilac, crimp. I mean, it's just nuts. like Blake 7 clothes.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Blake 7. I'll update the reference. Space age clothes. and I'm sorry, I just don't get a lot of it.
You don't get it.
And the boots I don't get either. Whereas Giorgio's beautiful.
Do you get it? What's your take?
I think it's kind of Armani's got a really clear aesthetic, and it kind of, you know, a lot of times you look at it and it could be Emporio, it could be Giorgio. It's kind of, you know,
agree, yeah.
and it's kind of, it's not really a show that I look at. To be honest, it's not. You know, I have bought Armani in the past, but you know, you kind of, it's just another one of those sort of big brands that you just kind of, you know what Armani's going to look like, you know what the color palette's going to be. You're going to see some crazy things like those jackets we just saw and some helmets and things, but
Where
it's
are the
just
jogger
very.
bottoms?
Yeah, I mean, Georgia. There were a few at the. I think these
So
are
they're
them as
kind
well.
of littered throughout. Yeah, those ones. Yeah.
There was a big kick-off between Dolce and Gabbana, and they both started saying, "We invented them." No, we invented them. Do you remember that? They actually made all the papers. It's hilarious. They were velvet.
No.
Was that in the press?
All over. That was the only thing I could think of. That was the only thing that happened. Yeah, like velvet quilted jogger bottoms. And Armani said, "I invented those," and Dolce and Gabbana said, "No, we definitely did."
Let's look at Dolce while we're talking about it, because again, it was a decidedly sporty collection. The opening looks that came out. Can we go to Dolce?
It's quite shapeless.
We're really
actually.
really kind of sporty. It was like these oversized sweatshirts almost.
It's medieval.
Yeah, it was meant to be medieval, but if you think a medieval tunic is quite similar to a big sporty.
I thought they looked like the pyjamas that you get. I don't know if they still do them. But they put a kid in a sort of 8-year-old boy. You know, those ones with the upstairs will have a big design, and then the back will be in the same colour as the sort of very narrow pants. They'll just be like themed like American football or something like that. Or they were in the 70s. They look like that, except medieval inspired.
Let's go through quite quickly.
Tom's looking in the middle.
Yeah.
That's the main one. That's the
Oh
main
no, sorry, it's that one with the shorts.
That top is amazing.
The concept seemed quite well sort of put through though, with the, you know, the set and everything like that kind of came through quite well.
Well, it's always a great
compared
show,
to-
isn't
yeah.
it, Dolce?
But
Like-
it is a show, but it's kind of, you know, it's not really. It seemed a little bit more commercial than some of the other ones. The more like some
Towards
of
the
the
end?
yeah.
Towards the end, the suiting got quite handsome.
yeah.
Double breast. Quite
Yeah, the
interesting.
suiting was nice. Can we go to the beginning, right at the bottom?
Yeah, I bought their pre-collection in Milan, and they didn't. You can't buy a suit from them that isn't 3-piece now. Every single suit comes with a
Really?
waistcoat.
Really?
Even evening wear.
Yeah, everything's
Yeah.
with a waistcoat.
That's interesting.
Good for them. They're right about that.
Really? Why are they right about that?
Because Tom
Three
wants a
pieces to
waistcoat.
see it stage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like I'm interested in how Kilgal's going to fare in it because you only do one button, don't you?
Yeah, no, we've got some ideas.
But okay. Oh, you did do a couple of waistcoats. That's right.
Yeah.
But just because blokes they don't want to look like they're just workaday guys. And so DB or 3-piece and stuff like that. Vintage touch is updated as the way blokes are going to look like they're not just on their way to just a really straight job, but they've got to wear a suit.
Yeah.
So three-piece and stuff is
It's more sartorial.
the way forward.
Well, I know I'm wearing three-piece, but
Yeah.
with jeans, so it's fine. But what was your take on Dolce, Tom? Because it was so sporty. Do you think, or were you a fan of the
You get
tailoring?
it sporty. I'm sorry for being sort of reading it wrong.
Go down, go to the
I don't
beginning
see
bit.
I just got his
sporty
period.
either.
I think it's- I think
thought it was
those
meant- I just thought it
sweat-
meant- I was
so
thinking
sporty.
Blackadder and Blackadder one, and Blackadder one mainly.
They're wearing a crown.
Whereas
That's all.
by the
They're
end of it-
sporty.
Yeah, but I
when
mean
they're
in
doing
terms of
Sicilian
shapes,
blokes,
the shapes, that's
It's
quite...
quite-
Well, it's just
medieval military style.
But it's,
Yeah.
the thin
going to
thread
war.
of the shape that comes through, it seems to be what is happening across a lot of the catwalks, certainly this time around, which is, as we've been talking about, big volume on top,
Yeah.
with slightly slouchier, whether that be tailored or not, with thinner trousers. And that seems to be what Dolce drew through.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I went back to their recently and I tried on one of the hats,
The snoods.
the snoods that look like
Bejeweled snood.
chainmail. They're heavy.
Did they look good?
It looked
mean
fantastic
heavy?
on me.
Do you mean-
I can show you a picture
By
later. on my
heavy, do you mean
Instagram.
like dancehall heavy, or do you mean
No, like
heavy?
actually, literally, it's
Oh,
quite.
'cause you're
they're
mixing up
heavy.
your language stuff. I'm getting
Would you,
No,
would you have
sorry.
picked those up
I
as a
think
buyer?
this looks.
Yeah, I think we could sell them at we could have sold them at Harvey Nichols farms there. Yeah.
A bejeweled snood.
Yeah.
I think this looks a little bit, regal, like the women's collection. The first looks with those coats that look like armory and the crown.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very consistent with what they've done for women. I mean, I
It's
think
about
there is
the
a
might of the brand, isn't it?
exactly there is this egocentric way of presenting their brands in the past 2-3 collections, which is coming up here. But I love the verticality, all the vertical stripes on the more formal suits coming up, and I think it was quite interesting.
voluminous, overcoats and DB longer suiting, 2 ticks. That's good. That's working.
But
Did-
double-breasted, it's not going to catch on for sort of your average shopper, is it? So
It's already there. It's already happened.
But do you not think just
Double
in
breasting's
fashionable man?
much
One and a
more
half
flattering
breasted.
than
1.5 breasted
most
is the thing for the
single-breasted.
sort of the non-believer, as sort of pioneered by Brunello Cucinelli. Another great presentation. It's the sort of shallow DB.
Yeah.
So and it goes. It's like so it keeps slim, but
But
that's,
I mean full double-breasted.
why
you're a
not?
fan?
It's
It's all got to
It
happen.
depends how high the double breasted goes.
No,
That's the
high
thing.
and big double. It's all gonna come round. We'll just get sat there bored. You know what I mean? That's what's driving it.
Where do you stand on?
I think people have been,
Look at the armory.
brands have been showing them for years and years and years, and they just haven't sold. And now
Yeah.
there's finally starting
Yeah.
to sell a few. But loads of people buy them, but they just buy them in the sale.
Yeah.
and you get,
Unfortunately, it's
like,
the
you get a
short
great
men
price.
buying it,
Naughty
and they
chaps.
shouldn't.
Yeah. Why do you think people weren't buying them before? Just
I think it's difficult to wear. So a bit like Tom said, with a smaller wrap, and it's kind of a little bit more comfortable to wear because you have to really button them. So when you've got a smaller wrap, you can wear them open. They look a little bit more elegant. It's just not quite so stuffy because it's that whole thing of
yeah.
wrapping up again.
But you also need a certain body to wear double
Yeah, no,
breast.
it
Yeah,
definitely
for
suits
sure.
a
It's
slimmer
not for
guy. So,
everybody.
yeah,
It's like
Yeah.
impossible to wear if you're not long and neat.
yeah.
for sure.
But you used to find a lot of the bigger guys. They used to wear them.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
Because I think
it's
there's
kind
that
of
sense
like-
of
which is-
covering up,
yeah,
you're
exactly,
retreating into
yeah.
the fabric.
But it just makes big guys look bigger, so all
Yeah,
that more
exactly.
fabric. So
Let's talk a
I
little
like
bit
this.
in a different direction. Let's go and talk about Calvin, because that was a real kind of standout collection. A lot of people really liked it. I think those sweatshirts. It was kind of a fun collection because they played on the Obsession fragrance. And it was very iconic in a sense. If we scroll down to the sweaters that have all the perfume logos on them, it was a very fun show. I think people were quite struck by that. What was our takeaway from Calvin? So you can see there the Obsession sweater and then the Eternity sweater.
I think buyers will go and buy that just because it's got those sweatshirts in it.
Yeah,
And
they'll
they
sell
won't be
really
they
well.
won't be interested in anything else, but they'll just be interested in the
I think the
sweatshirts.
rest could be anybody. There's
Yeah.
nothing that I would remember from this collection, nothing
Yeah.
that makes me think Calvin Klein. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh here, but
Yeah.
That's what's good about it, isn't it?
completely forgettable. Is it good about it?
I'm sorry, I'm only joking, but it looks more. It looks more. It looks more engaging than a lot of Calvin has done in recent years. Which is so pared back and minimal.
There was some quite nice bits in it. I mean, I'm trying to think. There were quite a few things that were made out of washed leather in it. Like there was a
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
nice bomber jacket in there that was very wearable and very nice.
I think what he does with fabrication, he's really into fabric and technology, and that's exciting to see, for sure. But yeah, those sweaters, that was interesting when we talk so much about tailoring, and then actually just the retail sort of might of a statement
Yeah, well, that's
sweater.
their money. There's nothing really hotter in menswear at the moment than a sweatshirt. It's just they'll fly off the shelves. So.
What's your take on the sweatshirt, Tom? It doesn't seem to be quite up your street.
Love a sweat. I'm obsessed by sweatshirts. Wear them all the time with cuffed bottom tracksuits that match. As a matter of fact, when I'm not at work. But I like a dark melange. Sunspell, there's Lot 78 are doing amazing modal mix sweats and cuff bottom joggers, really good. Never out of them, but
Just not in public.
no.
Are we not going to see you in an Obsession sweatshirt then?
I quite like the idea of it. I mean, it would. Can we go in on one? Are they actually sort of nice
Yeah,
sweat?
can you open one of them? If you go up or maybe open that grey one, the green one, sorry. Whichever one you fancy.
So it's got like an arm and
Take a
shoulder
while.
to it and stuff.
Yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
drop shoulder, isn't it? It's like
Quite nice, quite interesting.
Yeah. There's always a real sense of masculinity, I think, at Calvin Klein, which is always obviously really innate to the heritage of that house. But when I love how technical it is, because it's kind of like a really modern masculinity, really techy, and
yeah.
I think there's something quite
Techie or tacky?
techy.
Yeah.
The fabrications are always very kind of
Yeah, it's very
forward-thinking,
modern, yeah.
which is exciting. Now, a house that's going through a period of flux that I want to talk about is Jill Sander, because obviously this was an interesting kind of strange collection for them, because it was just designed by the studio, and I don't know if we've got it open. I think I know. Do you? Yeah, it was designed by the studio because obviously Jill has left
Came and left.
again.
Came and left.
Yeah, she's. No, I thought there was something quite beautiful about this collection. It was clearly kind of a sort of treading water collection. What would we like to see happen at a house like Jill Sander? I know it's always hard to sort of pluck names out of a hat, but who would we like to see there? What would we like to see as the feature for that house?
I'd like to see Carlo Brandelli have a little go.
You're like, shut up.
It's unfair. It's unfair.
I thought this was one of the best Jill Sander shows I've seen. As I say, like, it's currently the sort of the faceless team behind it. If they're doing work like this, though, I hope that one of them gets promoted to doing this as a full-time job, because I thought it was really quite beautiful, lots of the clothes. And I sometimes find Jill, because Jill Sander has such a strong aesthetic, sometimes it's hard to come up with new riffs on it, and this
Yeah.
one I thought actually did, and I thought there were some great pieces in it.
Yeah. Sure. What's your take when you're...
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's just kind of tough to try and sort of know what the identity is, because you've obviously had Raf do it, you've had Jill do it, and you've kind of had them do it. So it's
Yeah.
kind of, it's kind of tough to know how important it is now, you know, and how
Yeah.
relevant it is now. And
How much
you
is
know.
it selling? I wouldn't know.
I mean, I've never actually bought this brand. I've been to a couple of shows, but I've, you know, I used to actually sell it when I worked in Harrods, and it did okay, but it was never, you know, it's never going to fly. You know, the things that you're looking for, you know, but you're selling at the moment. T-shirts and sweatshirts we just talked about, you know, and it's not one of those
It's
brands.
not one of those brands.
You know, that's what really drive these brand sales is unfortunately those
It's
products.
quite obvious to me that she started probably to design this, or the influence is very strong.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if she designed it. I mean, I see what you mean by
Yeah.
having some, you know, new modern take in this, but it's so Jill Sander is scary. I mean,
Yeah.
this
Oh, yeah.
team is completely absorbed by the Jill Sander style, which personally I like.
Yeah, you would hope that to a certain extent. I mean, rather than somebody come in and completely hack it away and change it around.
Yeah,
like,
but the problem with this brand is that her aesthetic, as you said, is so defined and so clear, and it has been that.
That's what's good about it.
Yeah, but I mean,
But
when
then
you
how
want,
do you modernise that? I think.
yeah,
is
but
the
when you
thing,
want
yeah.
to put someone else at the helm of it, it has to be, I think, very different.
Yeah.
Because you can't copy Jill Sander. It's like, you know, you can't do Jill Sander if you're not.
Yeah.
Do you see
No.
what I mean?
you
Would
either
anyone
bring
notice
somebody
you-
in and
Would anyone notice if you just carried on pedaling along like this for a while? Would anyone notice or care? And, you know what I mean? It's like,
I think there was great excitement when she returned to the
yeah,
house.
but I mean,
definitely.
off the fashion people.
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly.
But then you could
Probably
say that
you're
with so
right.
many collections.
Again, you know, we notice, but probably who does?
Yeah.
Those sweaters are really
Is there
beautiful.
anyone I've missed? Anything that stood out that we haven't covered? I know it's a hard question.
I always like Neil Barrett in Milan.
Yeah, Neil Barrett.
Yeah.
That's a really
Oh, that
good
was a
shout.
very good show, you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, some
Very
of it
nice
talking
show.
about fabrication, that stuff that kind of melted from leather to suede, which is
Yeah.
absolutely incredible.
I think that's one of the few, like that and Prada, the ones that I kind of used to get excited about in Milan.
Yeah,
so.
for sure.
But it's super commercial, and it's really selling at the moment as well. It's just
Yeah.
really popular.
But-
Got really big in the Far East, and now it started to kind of come over to the UK.
And he used to do Prada, which is worth mentioning because people often forget that with him. And I think it's interesting that it is Neil Barrett and Prada now that you go.
Well, he
to.
was a Prada man when Prada men was probably one of the most successful men brands. So he has a very good experience.
Yeah, and I like that he does his own thing. You know, he's moved us away from that Prada thing. You know, even just in the shape of the trouser, it's very much his, which is great. Were you impressed by
That
the
was
show?
probably one of my favorite shows, actually.
Yeah.
I forgot about it, but this was very beautiful show.
Really beautiful.
I think you've pretty much covered it as it goes.
Oh, thanks. Go me. Brilliant. So what's our takeaway from this Milan season? I know that's always a really hard question, especially as we said, because Milan, it's not perhaps a a city of great statements. But what are we going to come away thinking about? Has it changed our perception on anything? Has it made us think a lot about luxury? It's made us think a lot about tailoring. What's our takeaway? Everyone looks at me really blankly. This is great. Nick.
Oh, great. Oh God. Well, where to start? I think the thing with this this time around at Milan, it was always going to be a tough season purely because last time at Milan was so colourful and so about pattern that obviously every single brand that did that last season was going to go in exactly the opposite direction, which is to take things down, pare things back, and as we saw, go for a lot of dark colours, a lot of brown, a lot of black, a lot of grey, and to a certain extent a lot of white as well. I think this proved that Milan, the people that show at Milan have a way of even taking things that could be seen as very, I mean boring is the wrong word, but taking things that seem very simple and still making them exciting. So doing an outfit in all black, but using great materials that make it still look amazing. Also that, but you know, talking about the jogging bottoms conversation that we've had, even the most traditional houses in Milan still have the capacity to surprise us.
Yeah.
And I think that was a takeaway that I definitely took from it, from seeing a house like Bottega Veneta doing jogging bottoms.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, these people can still, you know,
it doesn't
actually
shout, but it does. There's small whispers of change.
Exactly.
What's your takeaway, Tom?
Well, I think it's all about presentation. That's where the mood's gone. So smaller, sort of artisan, tailoring-led companies that have also got a creative thrust to them. That's where it's all happening. So you get up close, have a little look, and you know. So we've already mentioned Caruso and Bolioli, and even Keaton, which isn't small. I mean, that's where it's all at. It's up close, and it's about little stories they're working. Look, Caruso's brilliant, and Massimo Piombo, quite niche. So it's small.
Kind of that word of mouth thing, isn't it? Which is nice. It's that sense it doesn't scream.
Yeah, and that stuff's not fashion. That's just beautiful. It's connoisseurs bits that are going to last for ages, and you know they're not cheap either. So maybe for older guys, perhaps. I don't know.
Do you agree, Mimma? Is it all about presentation now?
Well, I don't know if it's all about presentation because I don't go to as many shows as these guys, so I see them. I think Milan.
What advice are you giving your clients? Maybe that's a good one to ask you.
Well, I think. Well, no, let me put it like this: in the past 2-3 seasons, or in the past 2 years, we've seen men's fashion growing as far as business as well. You know, like there was all this discussion about the metrosexual that is not a metrosexual anymore because of even really straight men that work in the city now are more conscious about how they dress. Hence these changes that we've seen, and I think Milan is perfect for them because it's not London when you have to wear a dress to be a cool man, but you can still wear, you know, relevant clothes, but then with a modern take. And I think Milan showed perfectly this, you know, this link between luxury in tailoring and in craftsmanship and the material and the access they have to amazing fabrics, you know. So I think it was interesting in a way because I think this stuff is going to sell more than some stuff that it's maybe more exciting to look at, especially for fashion people, but less for people in the street. I often talk with people that don't work in fashion, and they ask me, you know, when they see a show in London, what's that, you know, and I strive and try to explain that's important, it changes the way, whatever, but then at the end of the day they look at this and they're like, oh my god, I could buy everything. So in a way, by these times maybe Milan will sell a little bit more than what we've seen in London, but I might be wrong. Yeah.
No, I think it's commercial, it's big business, but I just think it needs a bit more youth and it needs a bit more energy. And it's just not really, I'd just love to see a little bit more newness. I'd love to, you know, it seems like almost when you look at the schedule, there seems like there's big gaps in the schedule. There's not like, you go to Paris and it's show. You go to London, it's show. You know, it's kind of like, there's always gaps in there, you know? And I just think it's just not, I just think it just needs to you just need newness, you know.
So
and I think that's the most on.
I think that's fair enough. It needs a kick.
Yeah.
Let's hope next.
Can I say a thing? At the end of the day, when you go to Hollywood and go on a red carpet and all the stars are dressed in classic Milanese, Armani head. So you know.
But it's not exciting though.
I know it's not exciting, but they can't show up in J.W. Anderson.
But that's big business. They've paid those guys to wear that stuff, haven't they? You know.
Well, I don't know.
There was a few British brands on there as well.
There's
on
a
the
few
red
what?
few British brands
Yeah.
were represented on the red
Spencer
carpet.
Hart.
I've got
Eves, but it's Spencer
yeah,
Hart.
but
Yeah.
I wouldn't compare that to J.W. Anderson. That's for me a classic, modern, you know. So
It's only that, and you get an actual.
wearable
That's the only
brand.
place you're going to get
By
new
the way,
stuff.
probably
Everything
one
else
of
has
my
been done.
favorite in England. Sorry.
That's the only end of the market you're going to get. I mean, Bankett's going about newness. You're not going to get new. I mean, new's
No, but it's needed.
almost
Men
impossible
need
unless you're
Milan.
going to do something completely
Yeah,
ultra.
but you get youth, you just get a new, you get a new perspective.
Right.
It just needs a new perspective.
Okay.
I think that's very true.
Maybe we should start a sort of contra movement to the London Collections men to sort of.
Just get everyone over to London.
I think
Yeah.
the contra movement.
All of
I'm
them.
sorry. I
All
mean,
of
I
them.
love London, and I'm a London. I mean, I'm a foreigner in London, and I've stayed, and I will stay. However, I think the counterpart of this is Paris. It's not London, if I may say.
Great way to finish. Nice
That's
one.
good for me because it leads me into Paris, which is our next
It's not
discussion.
true. It's all about London.
Thank you so much, guys. That was
Thank
brilliant.
you.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Thank you.